What's up, everybody? It's episode 49 of Blake&VishSports. Sports. We're one episode away from the special 50. Can't believe we've made it this far. Thank you all for your support. So,
Mhm.
this episode, obviously, the season is starting in 2 days. It's a Tuesday, and the NFL season starts on Thursday. And we thought now would be a good time to finally give our predictions for the AFC playoff picture, our Super Bowl predictions, our predictions for the NFC playoff picture. Just predict everything we
Yeah.
think is gonna happen, which teams are gonna be good, which teams are gonna be bad. Take some of your questions. I know a lot of you guys have been asking this since maybe during the draft itself, and we kept saying
It's
we
like,
need to see
yeah,
rosters, we need
yeah.
to see rosters. And we finally got to that point, so we're gonna give our predictions and we'll take questions after. So those of you guys, we know there's gonna be some debate, there's gonna be some disagreement. We can debate it. Um, Otherwise, just one more thing before I send it over to you, Blake. It's the streaming schedule is Monday and Friday. We had some things going on because it was Labor Day, so we're going Tuesday, but we will be back on Friday, and then we will resume a consistent Monday and Friday schedule throughout the football season, and we're excited to watch that with all of you. But that was a long intro. Blake, what's up? Are
Yeah.
you ready to go? Are your predictions ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. And I did want to say one more thing too. So Packers GOAT, he reminded me, said Packers GOATs have been a while. The Packers weekly stream is coming back as well with Nick. So we're gonna just do Packers weekly. We did that last year for a little bit, but we want to have it a little more consistent. So that's probably going to be a Monday or Tuesday type of thing. So watch out for that. And then Vish also does Mondays with Vish on Grant Cohn's channel. So you can check out that. And I'm sure there will be clips. We'll get some of those clips on the channel as well. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there because Packers GOAT just reminded me of that. So just wanted to
Yeah,
get it.
and I think Packers GOAT is going to be quite happy because I'm feeling pretty bullish on his Green Bay Packers this season and their
Mhm.
prospects and how well they're going to do. So just stay tuned to see where we go. But Blake, honestly, I got to start off with the AFC playoff picture, and I'm just
Mm.
going to give you the floor. I want to hear what 7 teams you have making the playoffs, what seed they are. I'm going to tell you mine, and let's have fun and debate it because I think, at least I'm hoping, we sometimes think similarly. We didn't discuss this one. I think we might have some disagreements here.
We
So
will. I
without
think we
further
will for
ado, Blake,
AFC.
what are your AFC playoff predictions?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go from 1 to 7. Um, I think for me, at least in the AFC, it's very, very top heavy. There's the tier one has 3 teams in it, and those are my first 3 seeds. So number one, I had Chiefs. 2, I had Bills. 3, I had Browns. But I think all those teams are going to win 13 games at least. And then fourth, I had Colts. Fifth, I had Dolphins. 6, I had Ravens, and 7, I had Patriots. The 5 through 7 are kind of, I don't know about the actual order, but those are just kind of my teams that I have in there. But yeah, what did you have, Vish, and what did we disagree on? Because I'm sure there was disagreement here.
Yeah, so the AFC to me was really, really tough because I thought there were
Mhm.
only like 9 playoff teams in the NFC. So picking 7 out of 9 wasn't that difficult. Nine
Yeah.
or 10. I thought there was about 12 teams, 13 teams in the AFC that I could have convinced myself if these things go
Yeah.
right, they can make the playoffs. And then you look at the schedules for these teams and you're like, well, I don't know. Like, because all of these schedules actually lined up very similarly where I felt, ooh, this is a rough stretch. Ooh, this is kind of easier.
Mhm.
I just wasn't sure. I'm with you. I think the AFC has a clear tier one of teams, and I think those are 3 of the 4 best teams in the NFL, just roster top to bottom and team wise. And that's the my first seed team, which I actually went with the Cleveland Browns. A little bit bold. They
Mhm.
have a little tougher schedule. I just think top to bottom that roster, their ability to run the football, how good Baker Mayfield looked in preseason, by the way. Baker Mayfield
Yeah.
looked unbelievable, and so I think they'll be the first seed. I got the Bills second. Their roster is stacked. I think they got a little better actually this year around Josh Allen. I think their receivers are a little deeper. I think their defensive line is better. Um, they obviously got a great safety tandem. They got good linebackers. They got a good pass blocking offensive line. I got them second. Chiefs third. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, they're not going anywhere. I think they'll be a little
Mhm.
bit worse this year because I think there's a little more questions in the roster top to bottom. I don't think they have good receivers or receiving options on their team outside of Hill and Kelsey. I think they're bereft of talent. I think their offensive line is a weird mix because even though it is a really good offensive line to me, guys like Joe Tooney are excellent run blockers, and the Chiefs are going to look to drop back. So I'm going to be interested to see if they run the football more this season
Mhm.
because they do have an offensive line that's built to run the football. And then I have questions on their defense a little bit more,
Yeah.
honestly. I think their defensive line depth isn't where it's been the last couple of years. Obviously, they've always had issues at linebacker. So overall, that's why I think I have the Chiefs a tad bit lower than where they've been. Number 4, I got the Titans. We'll talk a little bit more. I know you didn't have the Titans in your thing, so that'll
Correct.
definitely be
Yeah.
one of the teams we debate. And then 5, 6, 7 for me is Baltimore, New England, and I went with a little bit of a shocker. I went with Denver.
Oh, okay. Denver. Yeah, that's a good one. I'm with you. You said there's like probably 12, 13 teams. I would have to agree with you on there. There's probably only like 2 teams that I can rest assured say there is zero chance they're making the playoffs. And that's the Texans and the probably the Jaguars and Jets. Yeah.
Yeah, those three.
Those 3 teams, like I see virtually no path to the playoff for them just because rookie quarterbacks for 2 of them, and they're still just like younger rosters for the most part. And then the Texans, that just doesn't need explaining why they're there. But every other team, like I can really see why that you could have them in the playoffs.
Even the Raiders, I don't think like it's far off because of how good Derek Carr has played the last couple of years and the fact that they've had a very good offense the last couple of years. If they fix a couple of things on defense, which they're probably not going to fix, and they're definitely not as talented, like they're probably the 4th team after those 3. But I could make a case where if these things go right, schedule breaks right, a couple of teams have massive injuries, I could make a case for them. Like I left out like a Miami, right? And Miami's stacked top to bottom. It's tough to leave them out because I think they'll be a winning football team. I left out Indianapolis, stacked top to bottom. Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger aren't going to have a losing season. I just don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Like, you can just keep going down the list. There's just way too much talent in the AFC.
No, there really is. But I think we should get into some of the disagreements that we had. And I'd say the first one was our top 3, the top 3 AFC teams, which is I had the Chiefs at 1, you had them at 3. We both had Bills at 2. I had Browns at 3. You had Browns at 1. So I guess we can go Chiefs. So you have them 3rd. So I guess your main thing was they're deprived of offensive talent a little bit besides Hill and Kelsey. And then their defense still has questions too. And then I guess kind of the O-line, but seeing how that works. But I'm here to tell you why you are wrong, Vish. So last year, 14-2, made Super Bowl, kind of got embarrassed. The offense did not play well. The defense got cooked by, just an offense that was completely overpowering to them. But this offseason, I think they had one of the most underrated just changes overall, and that's the offensive line. You kind of brought it up earlier. Getting Joe Tooney, Orlando Brown, Humphrey. They're getting they lost Schwartz, but just overall, I think those 3 additions alone are amazing, and it should completely help having what they had at the end of the year with Mike Remmers starting as their left tackle in the Super Bowl. And then you mentioned the receivers outside of Hill and Kelsey. Wasn't that the same thing last year, though? Like, that really hasn't changed too much. And if one of them gets injured, it happens. But one of the 2 of them gets injured, then they're really screwed. But I think having both of them there, they should be fine. And then I'd imagine Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to improve this year and be healthier. And I think he's really, really talented. So for that reason, I still think their offense will be a top 3 offense. They still have Mahomes. They still have Andy Reid. The defense does leave some concerns, but their defense wasn't that great last year anyway, and I don't think it's had a massive, massive downfall. So I still am going with the Chiefs as my number 1 team.
So I actually agree with a lot of those points, and that's why I still think the Chiefs are going to be a really good team. Like, having them 3rd sounds worse. I think the bigger thing is you did mention that they did have some of these issues last year. I don't think it was as big. I really I really look at the receivers, and I feel like there's nothing there besides Hill and Kelsey. I really do. Um,
Hmm.
I thought, I look at the running backs. I think Edwards-Helaire will be better. I agree with that, but again, I just look top to bottom, and I like their offensive line. Huge improvement. It was awesome. Like, they got two rookies that are looking good in their offensive line too, and Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, the right guard. So like things are
Hmm.
definitely looking positive for the Chiefs. My biggest thing is you mentioned these issues they had last year, and I think I don't know if they're a better team than at this point last year, but they're definitely still a top-notch roster. It's just that I feel like Cleveland got
Made a lot
better.
of
I think
improvements.
they'll just be a better football
Mhm.
team. I mean, you get a second year Jedrick Wills. I think that'll help. I still think Odell Beckham coming back is a positive for them. Second year Harrison Bryant. Their secondary got significantly better. John Johnson was one of the best acquisitions of this entire free agency. To me, he's a top 5 safety in football, and the things he can do is going to make that defense better. And I know you don't like him, but I think Jadeveon Clowney, and obviously Jadeveon Clowney, if
I
he
think
plays, is a question mark, and his health
I
is a
think he's
question
an
mark.
upgrade.
Yeah,
I do.
when he plays next to Myles Garrett, that's a huge upgrade for them across
I
the
agree.
defensive line
Yeah.
compared to who was playing next to Myles Garrett last year. So I look at
Mhm.
that, and then to me, Buffalo did get a little bit better with the acquisition of Emmanuel Sanders, guys like Starlo Tulale coming back. I look at the fact that they were able to bring back a Matt Milano. To me, Buffalo just got a little bit better on the whole than they were last
Mhm.
year, and I look at Buffalo and uh, Cleveland is two teams that have made or maybe ascending. Like last year was their first year of ascending, and this year they're going to hit their peak. And I look at the Chiefs as a team that hit their peak that's kind of stagnating so that they can
Mhm.
recharge this and then hit another peak with Mahomes. It's going to come again soon. They're going to have another great roster around Mahomes. I just think this is the one year that maybe they take a little bit of a step back because of all the success they've had the last three.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I that was actually something that I thought of too with the Browns and the Bills. Like that was kind of the first year of, really good relevancy with their core and, actually making the playoffs and getting a taste of that. Because the Chiefs, since they got Andy Reid, they've just been making the playoffs year after year. But with Mahomes, it's only been since 2018, so only 3 seasons. But still, they had some struggles in 2018, and then 2019 and 20, they obviously made the Super Bowl twice. So I still put them up there above these teams, but I would not be surprised if the Chiefs don't make it to the Super Bowl because of these two teams. And I think the Bills are the team that will eventually get there, but we can discuss that later. But yeah, the Bills and the Browns upgrading as much as they did while also kind of having that young roster with the young quarterback and them even getting better, which is crazy to think about because Josh Allen looked great last year, and then obviously Baker had another standout season, and then year 2 with Stefanski should help as well. So yeah, I could honestly see any of these three teams being first or third. So we will see what happens.
Yeah, and we got to go through at least our 4 through 7 real quick. We had a big
Sure.
debate here on the NFC South, AFC South, excuse me. Both of us only had
Mhm.
one team from the AFC South in. You had Indianapolis, I had Tennessee. I think we should debate that real quick. Why you think Indianapolis wins that division and not
Yeah.
Tennessee?
Yeah, that's a good one. So for me, the Titans, I'm just not the biggest fan of them, to be honest with you. I know they have Henry, I know they have Julio and AJ Brown, and that's all great. Tannehill's an incredibly underrated quarterback. I agree with all of that, but this defense to me is still just not where it needs to be. I know they brought in Bud Dupree, but I think he benefited a lot from having just 3 elite D linemen around him. D'Amico Autry was a good signing, though. I really like that. And then still their secondary, they lost a few guys, Adoree Jackson. They lost Vaccaro, and then they lost another starting corner. Now, I know they drafted Farley. They got Janoris Jenkins. But that still, to me, is kind of big. And then I know they have Julio, but they still did lose Jonnu Smith and some other guys. So just overall,
Hernandez.
yeah, overall, I'm just not I don't think they really got that much better. And this defense is still just tough for me. Like I I just cannot have faith in this defense, and that is something that the Colts do have. Um, they have a really good defense. They have Buckner. Offense wise, really, really good O line, which I'm a fan of. Jonathan Taylor's solid. and I'm somewhat of a Carson Wentz truther. I'm not, saying he's going to be a top 10 quarterback, but I think he can do what Phillip Rivers did and then some, because Phillip Rivers last year, his arm was shot. I think his arm was really shot, and you could see that in the Bills game. And if they had another quarterback, and that's a lot because the Bills made it to the AFC Championship game, and that game was just really close overall. So I think the Colts are one of the underrated teams this offseason, and I'm putting them as in the playoffs above the Titans for the AFC South.
So I agree with you on the Tennessee Titans. I think their defense is a question mark. The thing for me is that their defense was terrible last year. And they were able to overcome it. And I think that getting Taylor Lewan back is going to add to their strength. I think their offense, to me, even losing Arthur Smith, having him or not, it's a really tough offense to stop when you have such an accurate and tough down-the-field passer in Ryan Tannehill to go with their bruising-style run game with Derrick Henry, and then you have two elite receivers on the outside in A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. And I know Jonnu Smith's going to hurt, Corey Davis is going to hurt, but you add Julio Jones, and I think he makes up for Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis a little bit. And then you look at their defense, and to me, Adoree Jackson, Janoris Jenkins, Adoree Jackson's probably better. He's younger than Janoris Jenkins, but I thought Janoris Jenkins had a hell of a season last season for the Saints. So I thought that was a good signing. I'm with you on Bud Dupree, but I think Jeffrey Simmons, who was outstanding last year,
really great.
Another step this year, and he gets even better. And I think Tennessee's defense, it's going to be a bottom 12 defense in the NFL again. I just think their offense will once again carry them. And the reason I'm down on the Colts is because I feel like they've had a couple of kind of big losses that were underrating. Starting off with the retirement of Anthony Costanzo. To me, Eric Fisher coming off the Achilles, I didn't think he was playing that great football as a left tackle the last 3-4 years, even without an Achilles injury. I'm not sure about him coming off the Achilles. I know they drafted, I think it's Sam Cosmi that they drafted. Yeah, they drafted Sam Cosmi. I'm not sure about that. So that's one thing. To the quarterback situation, Carson Wentz was mostly terrible last season. Let's just say it how it was. He was not good. Whether he bounces back now that he's injured, I don't know. Starting Jacob Eason, to me, that's risky. I know he looked pretty good in preseason, but I think that's risky. Yeah. Then so I have a question at left tackle. Then the receivers on the whole, T.Y. Hilton's on IR. Paris Campbell hasn't really panned out. I'm a big Michael Pittman fan, but I feel like there's just a lack of explosion across their offense. And that to me is a problem because that's what Carson Wentz didn't have in Philly. They had no explosive element to their offense. Now Jonathan Taylor is explosive, but they don't have a down the field vertical threat. So I have questions like that in their offense. Then their defense, right? Their defense on paper is fantastic. Darius Leonard's good. DeForest Buckner's incredible. And then their secondary's got a lot of underrated players who fit their specific scheme. Like Xavier Rhodes refound himself and reemerged and played really good football, playing a lot of cover 2 with them last year. Kenny Moore is a really underrated and good free safety, nickel. Julian Blackmon, who I also meant to mention, is the underrated free safety and a solid player overall. So they have a lot of good elements to their defense. It's just not a defense that can carry a football team, in my opinion. And I have a feeling they might have to, even though Frank Reich's an excellent play caller, because I think there's questions at quarterback. I think the offensive line, Quentin Nelson is hurt. I don't know how long he's out. I should have.
It might be a few weeks, but I know Carson Wentz is on track to play week 1 too, which is kind of big.
So Quentin Nelson did return to practice, right, recently. I think he's going to play week 1, but him just being injured this offseason, I just think, I'm not saying it's a point of concern. I more mentioned it as to say just they have players who have been kind of in and out. They've had a little bit of an injury bug this offseason with Wentz, Ryan Kelly, Quentin Nelson. And then the final thing to me is I thought the loss of Justin Houston was huge. He had 8 sacks. He was a real edge rush presence. I know that they drafted Kwity Paye, and Kwity Paye is a similar type player, not the same type player, but he offers a similar skill set from Michigan as an edge rusher. I don't know if he will be that for them year 1. And so I think they miss explosion off the edge, and that's big. And because of that, I just look at their team and I say they're solid in a lot of great areas. But I don't look at those 1 or 2 things that's going to put them over the top and make them consistently beat these higher level teams in the AFC. You have to have something in your offense that's explosive. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just Taylor. Maybe he can pop off an 80-yard run from time to time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that, and maybe I'm not seeing it. And then their defense, I just think there's question marks. I personally think Darius Leonard is a tad overrated when we're talking about the best linebackers. I think he struggles a little bit more in coverage. The stats won't bear it out, but if you really go back and watch and what he's asked to do at times, he's not the player in coverage that a Fred Warner or an Eric Kendricks or those kind of players are. So I think he's just a hair overrated because of that. But I just think overall, I just have questions like that about the Colts. And I just look at Tennessee and I say that offense will continue to win them football games. I see the Colts and I say they have a better overall roster. I don't know philosophically how they'll win games.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess the main thing with the Titans that would make you want to put them over the Colts is just the fact that you know what you're getting with that offense. And that offense was a top 5 unit last year. I don't see them regressing to anything less than that, especially with Julio. The only thing that could is if Julio got injured, but I think that whole thing is really overstated. Yes, he's questionable every week. Yes, he doesn't practice and hasn't for the last 4 years. But last year was really the only year he's missed significant time. So I really do think he'll be back. And upgrading at receiver from Corey Davis to Julio Jones is really not talked about as much as it should be. I know it gets talked about a lot, but that difference is alarming because Julio healthy is still a top 5 wide receiver in the whole NFL. And then you add A.J. Brown, who's emerging as a top 10 receiver or could already be there. I don't know. That offense is going to be really, really, really good.
Yeah. And real quick, let's just touch on our final 3 teams before we get to the NFC. So I think we both had New England. And then I think this is where the disagreement starts because I had Denver. You had Baltimore too. We both had Baltimore too, right?
We both had
7th team. And your 7th team was?
I had the Dolphins as well. Well. You had the Broncos.
So you went with the Dolphins. I went with the Broncos. I'd love to hear your reasoning on why you went Broncos, or excuse me, Chargers. Dolphins. I went Broncos.
Yeah, so full discourse. I mean, for those who have watched the show, me and you are not the biggest Tua fans in the world, but I still think he'll be solid. And I think a full offseason finally for him is going to be big. And here's the main thing with them. They still have a good defense. That's not going to change. I like Brian Flores a lot. I think he's a really, really good head coach. But their offense added so much talent. I'm really big into Waddle. I think he was the best, or I thought he was the best receiver prospect this year. They add Will Fuller, who was amazing last year. It just doesn't get talked about enough because the Texans were not good at all. Myles Gaskin is a good running back. You add that with Mike Gesicki and Devontae Parker. They have some weapons on offense. I like that bit about them. The only concern I really have with them is Tua. Just the whole Tua situation is honestly the only issue I might have. They kind of were pulling him last year at times for Fitzpatrick, and that whole situation is kind of a mystery for me still. But they did end up going I want to say 10-6. Yes, they were 10-6 last year, and they made a lot of new additions. So for that reason, I like them a lot. And their defense is still good. I don't think that's going to change. Xavier Howard and Jones is such a good cornerback duo. So I really like him. Oh, and I didn't even mention Jalen Phillips. If he can stay healthy, which is a huge if because he's been getting concussions at an alarming rate, he really could be the steal of the draft because he is that special of an athlete. So I really do like the Dolphins offseason.
So I can't disagree with any of those points. And yes, you and I have, especially me, I've been not the biggest Tua Tagovailoa fan, going back to him at Alabama. But everything about him this offseason should have you nothing but being positive about what he's doing. And he looks more confident. He looks more athletic. He's throwing the ball better. His arm looks stronger. All of those things I agree with. The reason I went with Denver, and to me, both of these teams are a little bit similar in some ways. Maybe you could argue Tua is a better quarterback or a more gifted quarterback than Teddy. I wouldn't disagree with that, but Denver's got some more weapons. Even though, Waddle and Fuller is real juice with Devontae Parker and Gesicki. That's really big. Right.
Mention him.
Right, and Albert Wilson, you're right. But I think the biggest thing is that Denver has Judy and Sutton and KJ Hamler and Noah Fant and Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. So I just think think Denver's weapons are a little bit better. I think Denver's offensive line is better. I think Miami's offensive line is still a question mark. There's a lot of young, talented players in that offensive line, but whether they can play up to their talent is a different question mark. So it comes down to the defenses, and I think Denver will just have the better defense this year.
They will.
I think Denver's going to have the best defense in the NFL. It's stacked top to bottom. Vic Fangio is the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. I don't think many people would disagree with that. I think their secondary top to bottom is the best in football. They have the best depth at corner, and they have a great safety duo in Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson. Kyle Fuller was a great addition. He's going to be fantastic. Surtain looks outstanding as a draft pick, and they've had other corners who we've mentioned in the past when we talk about them who have played well. Bryce Callahan is a hell of a nickel. And then they have guys at linebacker who've played really a lot better. And then you look at what finally having Von Miller and Bradley Chubb together healthy to go with this secondary. I think Denver's defense is going, and especially when you look at Vic Fangio, when he's had this kind of defensive talent, 2011 Niners, 2018 Bears, those type defenses, they take the ball away also at an alarming rate. So I think because of all of that, I think Denver's defense has an opportunity to just take them to the playoffs. And obviously their offense could be really explosive. The issue is they don't have the quarterback to have an explosive offense. But if Teddy can be consistent and doesn't turn the football over like he did last year in Carolina and plays how he played those 5 games in New Orleans when he went 5-0, I think Denver's defense can get them to the playoffs.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't say anything I disagree with on the defensive end, especially the secondary. Like, I don't think people realize how good that secondary is going to be. There is not a single weakness at any of the cornerback positions, outside or slot. And then also the safeties are both really, really good. You mentioned Fangio. He's awesome. And then getting Von Miller back is just such a good get. The one thing I will say, though, is I don't think their O-line is that good. Garrett Bowles was great last year. Legitimately one of the top 5 tackles, or left tackles, sorry. You could even say tackles. He had a great year, right? But the rest of the line, I am not convinced with. And, yeah, the thing with me that just I cannot get over is just the quarterback situation. Like, any other quarterback, I'd say, like, any other really good starting quarterback or even average quarterback, this team would for sure be playoffs. Like, Jimmy Garoppolo, you insert him on this team, that team makes the playoffs without a doubt in my mind. But with Teddy Bridgewater and Locke, I just hate that situation too much. And they just burned me last year. And that I just can't get that out of my mind. Like, that just I was really high on them last year, and then they just did not perform to how I thought they would. So maybe that's a little bias from my part, but yeah, this quarterback situation still just I can't put them there. Which is
and I will say this. But I'm not going to say their offensive line is great, but with Mike Munchak, one of the best offensive line coaches, it's better to me, better than Miami's. They signed Graham Glasgow for a decent amount of money, 4 years, $44 million this offseason. He's going to help a good amount. Last offseason. They signed him last offseason. He helps. He helped. You look at Lloyd Cushenberry, they drafted out of LSU. I think he's going to be better.
He's a good
Dalton Risner. They have a lot of young players that to me are just going to get better together. And then Bowles, absolutely was outstanding last year. Overall, I just think Denver's offensive line will be better than Miami's if we're comparing those two teams head to head. Will it be a top 10 unit in the NFL? Probably not. But I don't think Miami's will be in the top 15 in the NFL either. And then I don't look. I think Tua's probably more talented than Teddy, but out and out, based on what I saw from Tua last year and based on what I saw from Teddy last year, when Teddy has better weapons, even though Tua's weapons aren't bad this year by any means, to me that's a pretty even situation. Which then just leads me to the defense. And I know Miami's defense is going to be excellent. I know how good they were last year. But I just look at Draymond Jones and guys like Alexander Johnson, who we didn't really mention, who are really underrated players for Denver. And top to bottom, I just keep saying that Denver's D to me is good. I think it's not just going to be good. I think it's going to be the best in football.
Yeah, I mean, it is a big year for them. Like, if they don't make the playoffs, you got to think Vic Fangio's definitely on the hot seat. If not now, when? And I know he hasn't had a good quarterback, but this defense has more than enough talent to be a top 5 unit, especially with him. So I'm interested to see how they do. But yeah, I can't even really deny the Broncos because they just have so much talent, right? It's literally just the quarterback position. You just wish they had Jimmy G or Deshaun Watson or even Aaron Rodgers. That would just be filthy. But
Right.
And then, yeah, I guess a couple teams that didn't make the playoffs for me that were close. One, the Titans. I'm still not fully sold on the Colts. The Titans-Colts is kind of a flip for me. And then I had the Chargers. I think they'll go like 10-7 because I think they've got a lot of talent, and then Herbert's second year should be good. And getting Staley, I think, is massive.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Chargers. Miami would be a team right there for me, just like they were last year. They're extremely gifted. And then finally, I still have to put Pittsburgh there. I think there's no way Pittsburgh isn't right around the conversation. I have a lot of question marks about Pittsburgh, but Mike Tomlin, Ben Roethlisberger, they just don't have losing seasons. I'm not going to bet against them having one this year.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe I'm putting them at 8-9. That's the record I have for the Steelers because Mike Tomlin perpetually goes above 500. It doesn't matter if Duck Hodges is back there. But I don't know. They lost a lot, and they looked bad down the stretch last year, like legitimately bad. I still cannot believe that they were 12-0 at one point. Maybe it was 11-0.
11-0.
That in general is crazy to me because they finished the season 1-4 and then lost, so they were really 1-5. So I don't know. They will be interesting though.
Yeah, and so that's our AFC playoff predictions. I had Browns, Bills, Chiefs, Titans, Baltimore, New England, Broncos. Blake had Chiefs, Bills, Browns, Indianapolis, Baltimore, New England,
Dolphins.
So a little bit of disagreement there. We'll see who gets closer to being more right. Though I have a feeling that I think I nailed this one and Blake got this one totally wrong.
We'll see. I'm excited to see how it plays out and which teams are the wild card for the AFC. Because that I could see legitimately like 6 different teams.
And yeah, I agree. I didn't even want to do this because I didn't want to pick between like 7 different teams. Because like I told you, I like there's legitimately like 12 teams in the AFC that I could make a case that could make the playoffs. 12. Mm-hmm. There's 16 teams in a conference. Just think about that. So, I mean, that's the end of our AFC playoff predictions, which brings us to our NFC playoff predictions. And this is the topic that I think a lot of people are here for. Where do we have the 49ers in our NFC playoff predictions? I think it's going to lead to a good bit of conversation, a good bit of debate. But without further ado, Blake, give me your 1 through 7. What are you thinking? What are you predicting is going to happen?
Mm-hmm. So I have, I'd say similar to the AFC, I have like 3 teams in the tier 1. And those teams are the Buccaneers at 1, the Packers at 2, and then the Rams at 3. I think those are kind of the top of the line teams that I'm really confident in being there. 4th seed, the NFC East, I have the New York Giants. That division was just, I hated predicting that because I could see 3 of those teams being in this spot at the end of the year. But I did go with the Giants. 5th, I have the Seahawks. 6th, I have the Vikings. 7th, I have the San Francisco 49ers. I guess the biggest teams missing from here or from other places, I guess, like the teams outside, I have the Cardinals, who I could see making it. They're my odd team out in the NFC West, but I could really see them making it. The Saints, they maybe could, depending how famous Jameis plays. You never know. That man is a wild card. And then the Washington football team, I'm just not the biggest fan of Fitzpatrick, although he's probably better than Alex Smith.
So I actually have the same 7 teams. This is hilarious. And I also have the same 3 teams that I think are missing out. And I think New Orleans and Arizona are actually capable of competing for a wild card spot. I said Washington because there's a good chance they could win the NFC East, but that's why I have them. I don't think they're captured. I don't think the NFC East is sending 2 teams to the playoffs, but I think all 3 teams outside of Philly have a great chance of winning that division with some 8-9 bad record and going to the playoffs. But I actually think the NFC is a one tier. There's one team that I think is head and shoulders above, and then there's one team that I think is closer to that team than other teams, and then I think the rest, top to bottom, really are kind of in the same conversation. I think the NFC, especially the better teams in the NFC, fill out the, like the 6 to 10, 6 to 11 best teams in the NFL. But I think the top tier elite teams are in the AFC. So I obviously have Tampa Bay 1. To me, they're that elite team. There's not a weakness in their roster. The only thing that could stop them from not being great, especially when you look at their schedule, is if Tom Brady's age finally catches up to them. They have great running backs. They have great wide receivers. They have a great offensive line. They have great depth in all three of those positions. They have a deep and phenomenal defensive line. They have incredible linebackers, and they have a young, deep, and talented secondary filled with hyper-athletic players that's only going to get better. So top to bottom, the fact that they retained all their coordinators, especially Todd Bowles, who's an excellent defensive coordinator, they're 1 to me. 2, I had Green Bay. I just think first things first with Green Bay and picking them to be a high regular season seed is they don't lose at Lambeau. I think that's the most important thing. Green Bay doesn't lose at Lambeau. That's an elite home field advantage. Yeah, and so that makes –
I was just going to say, Matt LaFleur has just been wiping the floor with the NFC North the past 2 years. I don't think they've lost a game, maybe one, in his 2 years here. So I just want to throw that in there because not many people know that.
Yes, that's definitely important. Not to mention they obviously have, to me, the best quarterback in the conference in Aaron Rodgers. And so you look at that. I thought the receivers actually got a little bit better with Amari Rodgers, Randall Cobb. Like, I thought they surprisingly made that more viable besides Devontae Adams. I think Robert Tonyan will be better. Obviously, Bakhtiari not being there is going to be a little bit of a big blow. But by all accounts, everything I read Packers, Elgton Jenkins has been killing it at left tackle. Killing it at left tackle in camp. And I figured, Green Bay's got some no-name guy that they drafted in the 6th round who's going to be ready to start all 17 games this year at one of their offensive line positions and do a great job.
4th rounder, Royce Newman. He was a tackle from, I want to say, Ole Miss. They got him in the 4th, but he's going to be the starting right guard. And then they have Josh Myers, who they took in the 2nd. It's going to be the starting center. Right. But
so and look at their history with centers too. When you go down the list of just their last 2 centers, J.C. Tretter, who's one of the better centers in the NFL for the Browns, and then Corey Linsley, who was just the highest paid center in the NFL because most people considered him to be and I'm amongst them, to be the best center in the NFL. So I think Green Bay, because of that, will be the 2nd seed. I have the Rams 3rd, winning the NFC West, and I'll explain why I have them winning the NFC West. I think the NFC West is going to be a dogfight between Seattle, San Francisco, and the Rams. Like, when I say the Rams are going to win the division, it's not that I think the Rams are going to be 12-5 and the Niners will be 10-7. I think all 3 teams will be right there upon each other, but there's a reason, and I'll explain it a bit. 4, I have the Giants. I just think they're the most talented roster, top to bottom, in the NFC East. And I think this is the year, and I've talked about how I have a little bit more belief in Daniel Jones. I really believe he can be a top 20 quarterback in the NFL, and a top 20 quarterback in the NFL with a good roster can make the playoffs. 5, I have the Niners. 6, I have Seattle. And 7, I have Minnesota. So we have the same 7 teams, couple of different changes in the order. I think we have the first 2 the same. 3 and 4 the exact same, and then 5, 6, and 7 is a little bit different. But let's get right into that NFC West conversation, right? Sure. Let's get into why we have the NFC West teams ordered the way we do.
Sure. So, I mean, I can just give you my order now. I have Rams at 1, Seahawks at 2, 49ers at 3, Cardinals at 4. And I actually legitimately hate putting the Cardinals at 4 because that would like qualify me, I guess, as a quote unquote like hater or just disbeliever. And that's just not true. I just think they're kind of the odd team out talent wise, like their roster specifically. Like that cornerback position worries me a lot. Their O-line still isn't the greatest. Chase Edmonds and Connor, I worry there.
Rodney Hudson.
Yeah, Rodney Hudson was a great get. I thought that was really underrated. And then we don't know what's going to happen with AJ Green. Will JJ Watt play a lot? Rondale Moore is there, who's good. But yeah, And the thing is, too, they were 6-3 until Kyler got injured on that Thursday night game. And they were the first team in the division. And we kind of thought, I know we had a video, and we thought that the Cardinals could potentially win that division. And they ended up getting third. But it just goes to show that those spots are really tight. And that's kind of why I have the Cardinals last. Did you have them? I'm assuming you had them last.
I had the Arizona Cardinals last. It's pretty much the same reasons, and then I just don't think they have diversity in their offense. Like, yeah, you can add weapons, but you're still just relying on your quarterback, and you're relying on your quarterback to be the most athletic player on the field every single play of every single game and make play after play. And because of that, you see when Kyler Murray has a banged up shoulder, this Arizona team goes from 6-3 to not being good. I do think their defense will be very good, though. I think Vance Joseph is a decent defensive coordinator, a good one, actually. And I think there's a lot of talent. I know there's question marks at corner, and I'm not the biggest Byron Murphy fan in general, and him being their number one corner to go with Alford, Malcolm Butler, I don't like that at all. But I'm a big fan of the front four, Chandler Jones, Jordan Phillips, Marcus Golden, J.J. Watt. I love that. I like the duo of Zaven Collins and especially Isaiah Simmons, who looked really good at the end of the season. And I, of course, love Budda Baker. I think he's the best safety in football. It's just they're unfortunate to be in a division where even though Seattle probably has the worst roster top to bottom, even though they have a really good roster, they have Russell Wilson. So they're winning 10 games. And then San Francisco and the Rams just have two stacked rosters. But I wanted to get into why I had the Rams won. And it's not as much a talent thing because one of the reasons I was really high on the Rams this season was Cam Akers, and he got hurt. So I think the Rams also have question marks in their own way. I just think the Rams play the other three teams in this division better than the other three teams in this division play each other. The Rams' only team that they don't play that well is the 49ers. The 49ers don't play Arizona well, and they don't play Seattle well. Seattle does not play – Seattle and the 49ers, basically, they usually split. But Seattle plays the Niners better, I would say. But they don't play Arizona that well, and they don't play the Rams that well. And then Arizona does not play the Rams well. So, like, because of that, I look at the division, and I think so much of this playoff seeding is going to have to do with this division rankings. And I know the Niners finally figured out Arizona and were able to have that win at the end of last year, but that was also because of a brilliant game plan from Robert Saleh. And Robert Saleh is no longer the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. So I have questions from that standpoint. Then I look at what the Niners have to do against Seattle. I mean, Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright, especially, and I think Jordan Brooks is actually pretty underrated. I think people will hear his name this year, but a lot more as a replacement for KJ Wright. But they tendency this run game, run versus pass, better than any duo of linebackers I've ever seen, especially as the game keeps going. And we've seen Bobby Wagner have some of his best games in the last 2 years against the 49ers. The 2019 game they played on Monday Night Football with the Dre Greenlaw interception and then the missed kick and all that, Bobby Wagner was unbelievable in that game. The game they played this year in Seattle, Bobby Wagner dominated that football game. And so because of that, I have a little bit of question marks there. And it just goes back to the Rams play Seattle well, and they dominate Arizona every single year because they have Jalen Ramsey just lock up D-Hop, and then it just leaves the rest of the game, and they kill that defense, and they tear it up. And so because of that, I just like the Rams to be the team that wins this division. And then Seattle, San Francisco, I go San Francisco just a little bit higher, just a hair, just because I just think their schedule's easier. And so it's more or less that for me.
Yeah, so I pretty much agreed with most of I can't really say disagree with anything big there. And I just wanted to say, like, it does not matter how bad the Rams are. They are guaranteed to beat Seattle twice. Like, it just seems that way. Like, they play them very, very well. I mean, even with Jeff Fisher was there, Steven Jackson was always putting in work against them. I know that's random, but that is just the truest thing ever. And then, yeah, for Rams, I think Stafford's just such a big upgrade. Like, I know Cam Akers is gone, but they didn't have him all of last year starting and getting bell cow work anyway. So they'll make it work there. Their receivers, Woods and Kupp, are such a good duo. Higbee's still there. Deshaun Jackson's going to be good for at least a couple, like, 80-yard touchdowns, and Stafford has the arm to get it to him. They have a couple of second-round receivers still there. So I think their offense is great. And then having Jalen Ramsey and Donald is just such a big competitive advantage because you're having two of like probably the top five NFL players on your defense at the same time, and it makes
two
up.
best defensive players in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with that, and they make up for so many of the other deficiencies. They did bring back Leonard Floyd, but I mean, does it matter who's starting across from Aaron Donald? Because whoever is, they're getting 10 sacks. Like that's a given. And I do think
I like some of the other players in their interior defensive line. Like I thought Ashawn Robinson was a really good signing, especially when you ask him to play next to Donald and you see him as a run stuffer and all of that. I think that especially, and then you bring up Stafford, right? I could go on and on about Stafford, but I think people are sick of hearing me go on and on about Stafford.
You were on SportsCenter for Stafford. That was also awesome. I mean, I'm sure most of the people saw, but basically it was underrated players who could have made the Hall of Fame if they were on another team. And it was SportsCenter doing this, and you were on there, which is just so cool that like your Twitter was
really
like,
cool.
SportsCenter. That's awesome. But not to get too off track. And then I didn't even mention either the couple losses that I think are really flying under the radar. Obviously, Staley as their DC, he was highly, highly regarded, and he can be a really good head coach for the Chargers. And then Troy Hill and John Johnson. I think those are really underrated losses because those two were both really solid starters last year. But still, having Williams and Ramsey as your number 1 and 2 corner kind of helps your secondary a lot.
Yeah, so I'm a little skeptical on the Troy Hill aspect of this. I think he's a good nickel, but I do think that at times pure nickel cornerbacks get a little bit overrated in terms of what they do and what they're asked to do unless they're playing man in the slot like a Marlon Humphrey, which is really, really hard to do. Not many corners in the NFL do it. Case in point, K'Waun Williams is one of the best players on the 49ers secondary. He's a hell of a football player, unbelievable football player. Last year, the 49ers signed Jamar Taylor, who's mostly been a journeyman after being a second-round pick in Miami out of Boise State. Jamar Taylor, when you match the production, was he as good as K'Waun Williams when you watched the film? No, he wasn't. But when you looked at the production and the overall impact, was he that much of a drop-off from K'Waun Williams? No. And you're talking about K'Waun Williams, one of the best players on a secondary, and you're talking about a career journeyman who's never really lived up to his talent.
Yeah, that's fair.
Where I look at. I find even with the Rams, what they do, I think Troy Hill is replaceable. I agree on John Johnson. I mentioned earlier in the show with the Browns signing him, top 5 safety in the NFL. Absolutely think that that's a huge loss for them. But then again, like you mentioned, they have Ramsey and Donald. And even the Brandon Staley, I agree. He was unbelievable last year, but if you remember when we were talking about when Robert Saleh got hired with the Jets, who I wanted the Niners to get as their defensive coordinator, it was a guy by the name of Raheem Morris, the Rams defensive coordinator. And I think, if Staley is a 10 out of 10 as a defensive coordinator, I think Raheem Morris is an 8. And so I think because of that, I don't think they're going to fall off schematically either. I think that's a hell of a defensive coordinator. And, to be fair, like I'm obviously a Niners fan. I love the Niners, and I see a lot of things in the comments like I'm not buying into the Rams. I'm not buying into the hype until they show me something. Well, they've had 4 winning seasons in 4 years. They've made the playoffs 3 out of the last 4 years. The Niners have had 1 winning season in the last 4 years. The Niners have made the playoffs once out of the last 4 years. So which team needs to show you something? And in regards to losses in the secondary, the Niners have the same question mark at defensive coordinator with DeMeco Ryans replacing Robert Saleh. They have question marks in terms of their depth at receiver, their depth in their offensive line. They have a question mark at quarterback. Like, we don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback for the entire season for the Niners. So, I mean, because of that, like, I love the Niners. I'm really high on the Niners. But objectively, if we have questions about Seattle, if we have questions about the Rams, we have questions about Arizona, there are quite a few things that need to be answered about the Niners as well in this football season.
Yeah. I mean, every team has question marks, right? It's just kind of like, what do they do well that can kind of, overcome them or sort of hide them? And for the Rams, it's the fact that they have Aaron Donald and Ramsey on defense. And then on offense, it's that they have McVay, and now they have Stafford, who's an upgrade. So those, I think, for me and you, can mask some of the other deficiencies that they have a little better than maybe some of these other teams.
Absolutely. And And the other thing is, I see a lot of stuff like this. I read it on Twitter. I read it on YouTube comments and stuff, and see it all the time. I don't know if people just didn't watch Matthew Stafford. I mean, we had to watch Matthew Stafford just because Detroit was shown on TV a lot. If the Bears game wasn't on, that would be the local Fox game, so we got to watch him. But this isn't really true about Matthew Stafford. He is not a garbage time stat pattern for example. I think his third season they went 10-6 with Jim Schwartz, and he threw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. And that was
the best year was 2014. I want to say they were 12.
That was his best season. I'm talking about 2011 or 2012. Yeah, 2011. They went 10-6.
Yeah, earlier years. Mm-hmm. I don't know the exact year. I do remember he had 5,000 yards passing, which I guess that shows maybe.
Not true. They've had one good defense, which was 2014's defense, and they've had no running game his entire career. And he had Calvin Johnson, he had Calvin Johnson. Who did they have besides Calvin Johnson? How good was Brandon Pettigrew? How good was Titus Young, who they drafted? Michael LaShore, who they drafted? I mean, just top to bottom, they just didn't have a lot around him. I think a lot of people are going to see that because his ability as a quarterback is really just off the charts. His throwing ability, his ability to process information, his ability from the pocket. And his 2019 season, by the way, Matthew Stafford's 2019 season, the first 8 games before he hurt his back on that terrible Detroit team coached by Matt Patricia, he was playing like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL through those 8 games. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree. And we can get onto these other teams in the NFC West, but I think Seahawks, I don't care who's really on their roster. As long as Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner and Pete Carroll are there, this team will have over 10 wins. I think this team might be, besides the Cardinals, just overall roster talent, even with the Cardinals, I think they might have the least amount of talent outside of quarterback, especially on the defensive end. They lost KJ Wright, Jerron Reed, Griffin, their cornerback 1. Those guys are all gone.
Yeah, I think Seattle's cornerback. I think Seattle's cornerback, top to bottom cornerback situation is a huge question mark. I think their defensive line, they have a lot of players in theory who I know a lot of Seahawks fans are high on. I like Poona Ford. I'm not the highest on Carlos Dunlap. We've talked about Kerry Hyder. I don't think he's going to be a massive contributor. I still think their offensive line isn't very good, but I like their running backs. Obviously, their receivers are amazing in Metcalf and Lockett. I mean, whatever you want to say about Adams and Diggs, they're both very good safeties. Brooks and Wagner, to me, will be a good linebacker duo. And then, obviously, they have Russell Wilson. So, yeah, overall, I agree with you on Seattle.
You just pencil them in for 10 wins. It doesn't really matter.
To go with that home field? Yeah.
Yeah, and then the fans are going to be back in the stadium. That'll be – I think so.
One thing I did want to mention is, yes, the Niners have had success beating the Rams the last 4 times they've played, especially beating them with Nick Mullins. That's special. But I think one of the things the Niners have done really well is how well they've game planned against the Rams offense. Robert Saleh was instrumental in that. We don't know if D'Amico Ryans can do the same exact thing. The same way we don't know if Raheem Morris will be as good with the Rams defense as Brandon Staley was. That's one thing to mention. And then to me, the second thing is Jared Goff got easily rattled when the Niners were able to get pressure on him. And that led to a lot of bad decisions, a lot of errant throws, a lot of inaccurate throws, and just he gave up on plays that were available because he just couldn't function in pockets that had a little bit of bodies around him. This is where Matthew Stafford is going to make a massive difference and make it much tougher, I think, on the Niners defense. So I think on a top to bottom matchup, I look at it and I don't think the Niners where I say, they can do these things. They can run the ball like this and the Rams can't stop the run. I don't look at it like that. Even though I had Green Bay as the second best team in the NFC, I think Green Bay is a shocking matchup for the Niners because Green Bay will not be able to stop that run game. Sorry, Blake. Green Bay cannot stop that run game. But I don't look at it. I don't look at it the same way with the Rams. And I do want the Niners, obviously. I want the Niners to go 17-0. But when I look at this objectively and I put my fandom aside, I look at all 4 of these teams in the NFC West and I say there's question marks. And I think, Jamal, you summed it up the best here. All 4 are capable of winning the division. I just don't like when people say, this team needs to show me more, or this team needs to show me more. Well, the Niners also got to show a lot this season. There's question marks really on a lot of things with this team. First, can they stay healthy and all of that? I hate to say it because I don't like saying it because I think the Niners are going to win the Super Bowl if you ask the fan part of me. But, yeah.
And yeah, I think this is the point that needs to be made. Like, legitimately, I could see the order going any which way. Like, if you in the future tell me the order and you told me what it was, I would say I can't really disagree because I could see these teams in any way, shape, or form. I could see the Cardinals ending first. I can see them ending last. I could say the same thing about all of these teams. But what we know now,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's tough. Like, I could see I could see
my
the
man Jesse in Last Second Sports, go subscribe. Last Second Sports, he does a great job. But I think he said it best. All four teams are more than capable of making the playoffs, which is what makes this so hard. To me, the hardest part of doing this entire exercise, and this is why I hate predictions, because like you don't want to be wrong, but you know you're gonna be wrong, was the AFC last three teams. That was hell. Like I had no clue. 5, 6, and 7 because I thought like so many teams, and then we're putting the NFC West in an order because I was pretty comfortable with Tampa Bay. I was comfortable with Green Bay. I was comfortable with actually I wasn't that comfortable with the Giants. I just kind of picked a team. But I was very comfortable with Minnesota being that 7th team in the playoffs because I just feel like their roster mixed with their schedule, everything just kind of lines up for them to just consistently be like 10 and 7 and sneak in because other teams have to play each other.
That's what I had them at too.
Seattle, San Francisco, and the Rams, I was just confident they were making I would have them in my top 7 for the playoffs. I still to this day, like tomorrow I might wake up and say Seattle's 3, Rams are 6, Niners are 5, and then day after tomorrow I might say the Niners are 3, Seattle's 5, and the Rams are 6.
Yeah, it really could go any way. And the thing here too that makes it difficult is like yeah, I think the Cardinals and the Niners can both go 10 and 7, but like that's just not plausible because these teams are just going to beat up on each other too. Like you have to factor that in. Like they're playing 6 games against teams that easily have the talent to win over 10 games. That's 6 very losable games right there.
Agreed. And I think another important thing to mention with that, right? They're playing 6 against each other. While all 4 teams are really good, they're probably somewhere between in the top 13 or 14 rosters, all 4 of them in the NFL. I think we all agree that none of these 4 are in our top 5, or at least our top 4. I think most people agree the top 4 teams in the NFL are Kansas City, Buffalo, Cleveland, and Tampa Bay, in no particular order. So more or less, when you say that, you can't just say that, okay, they're going to beat up on each other and then they're going to go win the other 11 games outside of the division because they're not that great, across the board.
And this is what I also like just dislike about predictions as well. Like the Cowboys, I could have seen them making the playoffs last year, and then Dak goes down and you're starting Andy Dalton, and it's like, well, they just went from a bottom 5, bottom 6 quarterback, or they went to that after having a top 10 quarterback. Like that changes the course of your year significantly. So yeah, that's also a great point, Jamal.
I mean, I understand this argument, but then the counter argument would be, then does Seattle just have the 49ers number? Because I think Kyle Shanahan has only beaten the Seahawks 3 times in his career coaching the 49ers, and only once in Seattle. So, like, I don't think that's exactly fair, though. I agree with you. Kyle Shanahan's better than McVay. Kyle Shanahan's the man, and I do think they do have the Rams number. And the other thing I'll say is that I get stuff like this, like Seattle having a major locker room cancer. I don't know what this means. All I'll say is if they have it, I want to have that locker room cancer because it feels like they've made the playoffs the last 10 years.
Well, Dwayne Brown, I think it's Dwayne. I know
signed, though.
Michael Brown, yeah, he's having contract issues. We just saw Russell. Oh, did he? Like
they got his contract done. They got Jamal Adams done. They're just waiting on Quandre Diggs.
Okay. Yeah, I did not know or have not been up to date with the Brown situation, but I know he was mad. And obviously Jamal Adams was mad. And then this whole Russell Wilson stuff this offseason, it is weird, but for whatever reason, it doesn't matter who else is out there. It doesn't matter if Travis Homer or DJ Dallas is their starting running back. The Seahawks will do well. Like that.
I feel like we do this every year too. we look at the talent of the NFC West. We look at all the moves the Niners make, and they make a lot of shrewd moves. The Rams make a lot of shrewd moves. And then Arizona, one off season, it's Chandler Jones. Next off season, it's DeAndre Hopkins. And then next off season, it's Rodney Hudson, where they're just getting elite players at their position for next to nothing. But I think the biggest thing with Seattle is that they have the quarterback position the most set in stone in the NFC West. And because of that, and that to me is the biggest question mark, honestly, with the 49ers. Like, I love Trey Lance's potential. I don't think he's going to realize that potential immediately year one. I think he can have a great rookie season and be the offensive rookie of the year. I don't think he's going to realize that potential year one. And Jimmy Garoppolo is consistent, is solid. He's won a lot of games, no doubt about it, and all of that. But to me, Jimmy Garoppolo is clearly the fourth best quarterback in this division, and that's where, the quarterback has to be taken into account just a little bit. And that's where I get a little bit confused because, like, Kyler, Stafford, and Russell Wilson, to me, are all in the top 10 to 12 quarterbacks in the league. And Lance could be there maybe as soon as next year, but he's not there yet. We haven't seen him play, and then Garoppolo is clearly not there. So because of all of that, this division just confused the hell out of me, honestly. All I know is that I want the Niners to win it.
And I think we can give our final. I can give my final record predictions for the West.
You have records? I didn't do records.
I did records.
Was too hard.
I had Rams at 12-5, Seahawks 11-6, Niners 10-7, Cardinals 9-8. So literally just like one more win.
Yeah, right there.
Just down. Like, I could really see it going either way. And I wouldn't be surprised if, say, Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray gets injured. Like, that team's winning like 4 or 5 games, probably, if that.
Easy. And that's what Jamal mentioned, right? The injuries are going to play such a big part on this. Like, you and I are so high on the Bills. What if Josh Allen gets injured tomorrow? Well, we're idiots for being high on the Bills.
Definitely.
That's definitely a part of it. But I agree on Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray, and I would even say that for the Rams. Like, I know they like John Wolford, but if Stafford gets hurt,
some work.
I think the Niners are the one team where if Garoppolo gets hurt, they'll still be good. And if Lance gets hurt, they can still be good with Garoppolo.
Yeah, they kind of are not completely screwed. Whereas these other teams, like, I cannot imagine the Seahawks, what they would look like without Russell Wilson as their quarterback.
4-win team? 5-win team?
I mean, yeah, probably. Probably like 4.
It's not just that they wouldn't have Russell Wilson, it's that Geno's their backup.
And that they just don't have that, like, much talent that can carry them. Because Russell Wilson, like, their defense isn't going to, like, I don't think their defense will be top 10. I just don't think that. And I don't think
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Like, I'd say the Cowboys roster outside of quarterback probably is, like, just as talented. Maybe their defense not as much, but their offense has so much more talent. Like the Cowboys.
As Seattle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd more or less agree with that. No. I think Seattle having a Bobby Wagner and a Jamal Adams, I think those type of things.
I think their defense is better, but the Cowboys also have a lot of really, like, promising young guys on defense. I'm not saying their defense is better than the Seahawks. It's not. But their offense has way more talent, in my opinion.
I think they have one promising young guy on defense.
Who?
Micah Parsons. I don't know about those other guys.
They had a couple second rounders. And they have Diggs, and DeMarcus Lawrence is still there. He could be decent. I don't know.
Lawrence is good. Lawrence is definitely good. I'm not that high on Diggs, but I think that's a little bit of a stretch to say Dallas is equally as talented. I think Seattle's just got better depth. Dallas has no depth. But I understand the point you're making, and I agree with that. Like, Seattle's roster without Russell Wilson is definitely middle of the road in the NFC. It's a 5-7 win roster. With Russell Wilson, it's 10 to 11 wins.
Yeah, that was just a random team with an injured quarterback that I thought of. I would be interested to see how the Seattle Seahawks do without Wilson. I don't think anyone would say good, but we can bump over after the NFC West talk. Been a long time on that, but we can talk about. We
spent a long time on these predictions, about 30 minutes each.
Yeah, I think we could quickly do the NFC East because I think this is, besides the NFC West, I could see this going 3 ways. And I don't think you could say that about every division. or any other division, really. Like, I can't see that happening in the NFC North or the NFC South.
NFC West, you can say it, obviously.
Yeah, NFC West. But we both had the Giants. But Vish, why did you have the Giants over Washington and the Cowboys? And I guess and the Eagles, although I think the Eagles are the worst of this bunch.
To me, the Eagles have no chance. But
Yeah.
why I had them over Dallas? Okay, to me, Dallas has the only good quarterback in this division. I'm not high on Jalen Hurts. I'm not high on Fitzmagic, and I don't think it's not that I think Daniel Jones is good. I just didn't like how I don't like how people just jump on him and make him such an easy target and constantly make fun of him. So because of that, Dallas would be the easy selection. They have the best quarterback by far. They have a really good quarterback in Dak Prescott, but I don't like Mike McCarthy. I don't like his offense. I don't think Dan Quinn is going to change much to their defense. Like, sure, playing the Seattle scheme, real great. What's that going to add? You need something more than the Seattle scheme. And they somewhat have the personnel for it, but I don't think they have a great pass rush, honestly. DeMarcus Lawrence is solid, but outside of him, I don't see much on their defensive line in terms of being able to create pressure. I mean, Aldon Smith was good for them last year, and then obviously they didn't re-sign him, and things went wrong for him, and now he was not in Seattle anymore. Their linebackers are talented. They drafted like 3 linebackers this year. Obviously, Micah Parsons is really, really gifted. He'll be a good fit for this scheme, allowing him to freelance a little bit more and play fast and physical. Think like the way Miles Jack plays in Jacksonville. I think that's the comp for Micah Parsons. And Jalen Smith does not look explosive. I don't think Jalen Smith has it anymore, and I don't think Dallas believes in Leighton Vander Esch anymore. That's why they drafted Jabril Cox and a couple other guys, because I don't think they believe in his neck. I don't like Dallas's secondary. I think it's young. I think it's maybe got talent. Really, the only positions in Dallas I like is I don't even like their offensive line that much. I think their stalwarts of their offensive line are all old besides Lyle Collins, and obviously Zach Martin being in COVID protocol isn't great. I don't know if Zeke's got anything left in the tank. I love their receivers. I love Dak. I don't like their roster. That's what I'm trying to say. I think what happens with Dallas's roster, and I'm just going to go on a small tangent before I touch on those other 2 teams, is that because the Joneses draft this roster, the players get overhyped and people believe that the players are way better than they are. And then when the players underperform, they blame the coaches, when in reality, the Joneses don't draft as well as anybody thinks. These players are not as good as they think they are. The supporting cast for Dak Prescott has been wildly overrated, especially the last couple of years. They have no depth on their offensive line.
Do you think their offense is going to be good this year?
As long as Dak's healthy and those 3 receivers are healthy, yeah.
Okay.
Those 2 receivers are way too good. And actually, I don't know if they'll be a good offense. They'll throw for a lot of yards.
They will throw for a lot of yards. But I did want to say something with the Cowboys too, though, that like we say they don't have a lot of talent. They did their first 6 picks, all 5 of them being top 100 like overall picks, were on defense. They took 2 cornerbacks, a couple D linemen, and 2 linebackers. Like, I think at least a couple of these dudes are gonna be good and like show out because they have all the opportunity in the world. So I do think
maybe, but I don't think Dallas drafts as well as anybody gives, as people try to give them credit. True. These draft picks get overrated to me in Dallas all the time. When not all of because they're Dallas Cowboys, they were drafted by the Joneses. They're immediately thought of the best player ever. And if they don't do well, or if Jalen Smith is one of the worst linebackers in the NFL last season, they blame immediately Mike Nolan and stuff. But it's not his fault that Jalen Smith is playing slow. He's not explosive. He's not playing with quick trigger. But that's besides the point. Going to Washington versus Giants, to me, the defenses are actually pretty close. I know Washington's defense gets a little more hype, and I think a lot of that has to do with Chase Young. He might be one of the most hyped players in the NFL. And then, Jamin Davis, I wish they took Owusu Koromoa, but Jamin Davis was a good pick, and William Jackson was a good signing. I think Washington's defensive line will still be really good. Jonathan Allen is outstanding. Deron Payne's unbelievable. Chase Young is really good. I think he's a little bit overrated. People are already crowning him as a top 5 edge in the NFL. I don't even know if he's in my top 10, to be honest with you. And then Montez Sweat, I think gets a little bit too much credit for his sacks that I think are a little bit a product of who he plays next to, though he's a freak athlete. But overall, I don't. There's something about Washington that I don't like. I don't love their offensive line. McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, love it. De'Ami Brown, love it. Gibson, I'm not the highest on that entire situation. I don't like Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't think he's a fit, or I don't think he's the best fit for this Scott Turner offense when they want to check the ball down, throw the ball to their running backs, focus on yards after the catch, and Fitzpatrick wants to throw the ball, bounce away down the field. And looking at the other aspect of it, which is the Giants, I don't think the Giants' defense is far off. Giants' defense is a better secondary top to bottom. They paid Adoree Jackson a lot of money. Jabril Peppers is a good safety. Logan Ryan, you always mention Logan Ryan. He played great last year.
Really, really underrated. Like Bradbury, really I think he has a case for a top 5 corner in the league. Like he was that good last year. He just does not really get talked about.
Martinez played a lot better last year. Dexter Lawrence is a monster. Leonard Williams is a monster. It's a good defensive line. Offensive line, obviously massive question mark, but I like the Giants' weapons top to bottom better. And I like Daniel. I mean, if Fitzmagic can be Fitztragic, like Daniel Jones also obviously turns the ball over way too much. I hate Jason Garrett's offense. I don't like Joe Judge, but I think that you look at top to bottom, you look at what Daniel Jones looks like when he's playing really well, and you look at Kenny Golladay and Sterling Shepard and Saquon Barkley and Kadarius Toney if he's healthy. Like,
they have talent.
Just a better ceiling for the Giants, top to bottom. I just think it's the best roster in the division, and that's why I picked them. Though, I mean, I also didn't mention Washington has Logan Thomas, who's pretty good. I'm not confident with any of these 3 teams. I think the NFC East sucks. I don't think they deserve to get a playoff spot unless one of those teams has a record worthy of it, because Arizona, it would suck to see another team miss out on the playoffs for like the 3rd or 4th straight year because the NFC East is just terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kind of on your point, like this, I talked my way into thinking all 3 of these teams could make the playoffs. I really did, because they were all really close last year. I think they're going to be close again this year for the most part, especially just because of the quarterback situation. Like you look at the starting quarterbacks in this division, there's one good one. There's only one good one, and he was injured last year. The best quarterback in the division last year was probably Daniel Jones, like for the majority of the year. Like that is just dumbfounding to even think of. But yeah, so I can start where you kind of left off with the Giants. I think getting Saquon back is going to help a lot, just bring an explosive element. Now, Wayne Gallman was all right, like yards per carry wise and all that, behind not a good old line, but Saquon's just incredibly explosive. And then I still don't like their weapons, or sorry, not their weapons, their O-line a lot. I still think that leaves a lot to be desired. But adding Kadarius Toney and Golladay to the mix, I think can only help. And you just compare their offense from this year to last year, it's a lot better this year. And you mentioned their defense, grossly underrated. James Bradbury, Peppers, the whole secondary is good. And Blake Martinez behind a good defensive line is a little bit better. That's all I will say. And then I guess I can move on to the next team. Cowboys, I struggled with this one, Vish. I really did. Just having the best quarterback in the division by a landslide helps a ton. And then you think about the fact that they are getting a lot of weapons back, or O-line back, hopefully from injury, because they were all injured last year. They have CD, Cooper, Gallup. Zeke will be a little better with Dak there. And then defense, they drafted a ton of guys early. And I think that kind of goes unnoticed. So they should be hopefully better on defense as well. And then Washington, I have a hard time not picking them at first. But for the last 10, 15 years, no team in the NFC East has repeated as division champions. And that's part of the reason. That is part of the reason. So there is that. But yeah, I'm with you on the Fitzpatrick stuff. It's hard to get behind him because he goes with the Buccaneers and the Dolphins. He'll have moments of just pure brilliance, and then I'll have moments of like he's actively just losing you games due to turnovers. And that really hurts for a team like this, that I think someone like Andy Dalton would fit so much better. Or even here's a thought. If they got like Cam Newton, he was with Rivera on the Panthers, I think that would be a decent landing spot for Cam if he gets picked up. And I think
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. I mean, we'll see. I mean, again, like you mentioned, there's a lot of people here ripping on Daniel Jones, and I agree with that. I just don't believe much in Fitzmagic. I don't believe anything in Jalen Hurts. Only quarterback I believe in that division is Dak Prescott, and I think that Washington and the Giants just have much better rosters surrounding their quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, like it really is just tough, and that's why, like for me, the Cowboys, like I could realistically see them winning it, just because they have Dak, and they were only a game behind Washington last year too. They had the same record as the Giants, and that was without Dak for half the year. So like you would at least expect to get a couple wins from having him back. So I really see them like they're kind of like my sleeper team. I could see them winning that East, unfortunately, because I don't really like them particularly, but I do like Dak and the weapons they have.
That's fair. That's fair. Of course, Dak's health is a little bit of a question mark too.
Yes.
But yeah, overall, I mean, this has been fun, man. We've gone through these playoff scenarios. It's been fun to predict. Just I wanted to reiterate our predictions for the AFC and the NFC so that people can drop their disagreements down in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, and share, by the way. Oh, we forgot our Super Bowl predictions. We'll do that real quick. That's my fault. Jamal, thank you for reminding me. So real quick, our Super Bowl predictions. Blake, who do you have in the Super Bowl? Who do you think is going to win?
I don't like having repeat teams, but I do have the Buccaneers there just because that talent is so good. Although I do have the Packers very close second. I have those two teams facing off in the NFC Championship again. Just because I think this last dance thing with the Packers is a good thing. I really do that they're all embracing it. Although I don't know if you saw this, but they were all on Instagram like posting what players they would be from the Bulls team. And I want to say Bobby Tanyan posted Dennis Rodman, or maybe it was Aaron Jones or someone like that posted Dennis Rodman. And I was not, I don't know. I didn't like that. But Devontae and Rodgers are Jordan and Pippen. You can book that, Vish. So I took Buccaneers, and then I'm taking the Bills out of the AFC. I really like this team. I think Josh Allen, people are not realizing how special he was last year. And I slept on him hard. I didn't think he was going to be this good when he originally came out, and he proved me wrong. And last year he was, I would say, the third best quarterback performance-wise. And I think he'll take them there, especially with Diggs too. Like him and Diggs just have the best connection. So I'm going Bills and Buccaneers as my Super Bowl teams. And then I'm just going to take the Bills. It's really hard to repeat. I know the Buccaneers they do have a better roster, but it is so hard to repeat. You saw it with the Chiefs this past year. They got absolutely destroyed, and you've seen it in the past as well. So it is very hard to repeat. So I'm going Bills, Buccaneers with the Bills winning.
So with the new playoff format, with only one team getting a bye in the 17 games, I don't think a single of the five of a non-division winner has a chance of winning 3 games in a row and going to the playoffs that way. So for me, that rules out San Francisco, Seattle, Minnesota immediately, and Baltimore, New England, and the Broncos immediately. The Giants, no way they're going to the Super Bowl. That rules them out. The Titans, I think their defense would get exposed, which leaves me with Tampa Bay, Green Bay, the Rams, and Browns, Bills, Chiefs. I don't think the Rams are capable of winning 2 road playoff games, especially one in Lambeau and one in Tampa Bay. So that rules them out because I just think they have issues with depth in their roster. The Chiefs, so now I'm left basically with 5 teams. I think Tampa Bay is going to represent the NFC. I know Green Bay came close to them last year. I think Tampa Bay is just going to be a more confident team this year. I think they had so much talent last year, and they were never able to realize. They were never able to get the confidence they would have had. I think they're going to be confident this season. It's going to be a little bit like the 15-1 Packers. You remember that in the Chiefs last year. They're just going to come in and they're going to roll every team. I think that's what's going to happen. So I'm going to pick Tampa Bay to repeat going to the Super Bowl. And then out of the AFC, right, I think it could be one of those 3 teams, Browns, Chiefs, or Bills. I've been saying it since March, and I'm just going to continue with it for the sake of continuity. I think the Cleveland Browns are going to win this, or go to the Super Bowl and represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Yes, I think they're going to be able to get through the Chiefs or one of the Chiefs or the Bills, depending on who they play. which leaves me at my Super Bowl prediction being Browns versus Tampa Bay. And I'm going to say the Bowl of Cleveland. This is for you.
Okay.
I think Baker Mayfield, the Cleveland Browns, I think they have the best roster in the NFL, and I think they win the Super Bowl.
Interesting. I like the Browns. I could see them AFC Championship. I could see them Super Bowl. My only thing in reservation with them is I just think that Allen and I think Mahomes are just on a completely another level than Baker. And for that reason, I just not trust them as much as I do.
But the thing is, for me, to win road playoff games, still, you got to be able to run the football. You have to be able to close games running the football. And both of those teams cannot run the football. And that's so important to me.
The Chiefs, I guess they haven't really had many road games. But, I mean, they haven't had to run much. Or they haven't been the best at running the Chiefs. But they still, do fine. Although they are, don't get me wrong, the Bills are definitely the worst running team out of those. Like, I get that.
They're one of the worst running teams.
And they're a lot worse than the Chiefs. Yeah, but Josh Allen's running, I think, also adds a lot for them because that man does it all.
Agreed, but to me, they also struggle stopping the run. They don't have the biggest defensive line, and to me, those are the two things. If you can't stop the run, if you can't run the football, I mean, we saw Baltimore had the Bills really dead to rights in that football game. They really it wasn't. The Baltimore played them really well. And so, I mean, we'll see. I mean, Baker is not Goff 2.0. He's got a better arm, stronger arm. He makes better decisions. He's quicker release. He's more accurate. He has better ball placement. He's better. He's better under pressure. He's more athletic under pressure. I mean, Mayfield is probably the best, is closer to the Tannehill Cousins in this offense. That's the tier he's in. He's not in the Jimmy Goff tier. That's my personal feeling. And real quick, there was one more thing I wanted to touch on. I 100% agree with this. This game is going to be insane.
Yeah, that'll be a really, really good game. I mean, that game, I know it wasn't that close, but I don't know. I think the Bills will come back. And I will say this, they did not impress me the most this past postseason. Like, their games, didn't – all right, I won't say they didn't impress me, but their games were really close. That Colts game was very, very close. Same with the Ravens game too. And then they obviously didn't look the best against the Chiefs. They lost by 2 touchdowns, but I don't know, man. I still think they'll make
the Colts could have gone real differently if, Philip Rivers wasn't the quarterback of the Colts. That's all I got to say. And in regards to how did he do against the 49ers in 2019, well, I don't know how many quarterbacks are going to do with Greg Robinson starting as their left tackle, trying to block Nick Bosa, and Freddie Kitchens calling their plays, going up against the best defense in the NFL. That's all I got to say. I mean, I'm not like a Baker fan by any means, but man, I think that's an unfair thing to expect Baker Mayfield, to be doing anything in that situation.
Yeah, but I think for me, and I think for you too, I think there's 5 teams, or I have like a clear top 5 teams, and that is the Chiefs, Bills, Browns, and then Buccaneers, Packers. Like, those are my top 5.
I wouldn't even put the Packers there to me.
You don't think so?
I think their defensive line is still a question mark in terms of their interior defensive line and their power there, and I still have questions about their linebackers. And so I don't think they would be able to beat either of these 4 teams. But to me, right now, as we stand it, Bills, Chiefs, Buccaneers, Browns, those 4 teams are just a cut above everybody else if you're just looking on rosters on paper.
Interesting. I mean, I'm still putting them up there. I still have them in my tier 1 for teams. You may not, but I'm sure you have them. You're probably one of the top teams in the next year.
They're right there. Yeah. To me, the Packers are just missing the little bit extra juice of talent that these other teams have. What the Packers have is unbelievable execution. They have a great scheme with LaFleur. Rodgers executes as well as anybody. They have precision. I just don't, when it comes down to it, they have a great offensive line, but when it comes down to it, you need one guy to just go make a play that is not available in the scheme. Who's going to make that play for the Packers if Aaron Rodgers doesn't make it? Who's going to make it on defense?
Jair.
Maybe. But Zadarius Smith is a hell of a pass rusher. But, I feel like, a guy like a Shaq Barrett is more capable of making that one
I agree.
game-changing play in a big game than a Zadarius Smith because he's
And I
just more
think
explosive than him.
we need Rashawn Gary to I think he's gonna get more playing time this year, and I think he's getting slept on right now, but he would be the one guy that his athletic profile is off the charts, and he's improved every year, and he could be that guy that steps up and plays great. But yeah, and then don't forget too, now that Pettin's gone, we don't no longer have Preston Smith at the cornerback position, so that is big time.
No, but I do think Green Bay is going to be really good. Every year with Aaron Rodgers, you're really good. What do you have to complain about?
Championships in a row. That I think they have to be in that first tier, at least for me. And it could be homerism or bias or whatever, but I'm still putting them up there as being one of the final four teams.
Yeah, I'm putting the Niners up there too.
That is true. You could have them there.
I think they could. Honestly, the big question mark with the Niners is a quarterback situation. We could be sitting here week 8 and being like, yeah, the Niners are probably the best team in the NFL. But how are we supposed to do that right now when we just don't know what's going to happen with their quarterback situation?
Trey Lance is such an unknown, legitimately such an unknown that it's I think we've both said it. We could see them going 13-4 just because they have a very, maybe not very similar, but they have a lot of the key guys from 2019 still here. And then plus they've gotten better in certain ways. So it's you could realistically see them returning back to that. And if Trey Lance is as good as a number 3 overall pick, that's a step and a half above Jimmy. So you can see why you'd have them there,
100%. Just think about their run game with Trey Lance. I keep going back to that. That's what I want to see. I don't even know if we're going to be able to see it week 1 now because he's got that chip finger injury.
They should have just kept him outside the pocket.
No, but really, thank you guys, everybody, for spending this much time with us. Obviously, we're 49 episodes deep. 50 will be coming on Friday. We got to think of something special to do for episode 50. We appreciate every single one of your supports. It's been an hour, 27 minutes of us just predicting a lot of things with the NFL season. We'll be posting a few more clips up till Friday, and we'll be able to hopefully talk about what happens on Thursday, on Friday, and a lot of cool things like that. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe, share, comment down below who your playoff teams are, why you think we're wrong, and why why you think you're right. It'll be fun to see what happens this season. Before we go, sure, Jamal, what's your question? We'll answer that.
Yeah, you guys can ask some questions before you do that. I do not know where Watertown, Wisconsin is. I actually don't live in Wisconsin and never have. So I'm not very familiar with the area too much. But Jamal, you can throw your last question unless you already threw it above.
I'm looking for it right now.
Yeah.
Oh. No, I don't think he did.
When do you I think it's this one. So Jamal asked, when do you think we'll see the first 6,000-yard passer, and who do you think it'll be? Mahomes, Allen, Dak got to be in the conversation. I
think it's this year.
You think this year?
Yeah, 17 games.
That's only one more though. The max, so the most is 5,500 or a little below, and that was in 16. So you think someone can get 500? That extra game's going to get them 500.
Dak was on pace to do it. I think the two guys that will be in the conversation the most are Allen and Dak, because those two guys are going to throw the ball 45 to 50 times a game.
I like Dak.
We saw the first preseason game with Allen, bro. Allen was dropping back. I think that he dropped
slinging it against the Packers.
Yeah, they dropped him back every play. It was against the Packers, wasn't it?
Yeah, he had an absolute strike to Gabriel Davis, 35 yards on a rope.
Yeah, that was a beauty.
Insane. But
Jordan Love threw some beautiful balls to the Bills in that game.
He did have a couple of bad plays, but getting back on the topic here, I think what you can't be a good team and have 6,000 yards passing. You're a middle of the road team, your defense is not good, and you have a quarterback that's slinging the ball. And one thing I'll say I know Dak was on pace, this team was consistently like turning the ball over early. If you remember, Zeke had a bunch of fumbles. Their defense was a ton of points, and they were just like, it wasn't garbage time because it was like the second quarter, but like the team was playing a little more preventative, like the Falcons game when he went absolutely berserk. Like, I just can't see that happening every single game like it did last year, because that was happening on a consistent basis where like they would go down by 3 scores early and then like Dak's just dropping back 50 times. Like, you can't expect them to turn the ball over that frequently and be down that early and having to like put up yards basically to catch up.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, yeah, they were going down very, very low. And then, yeah, I mean, the Browns game was just like that. Yeah, agreed.
And then I have a question for you. One more thing real quick. What do you think would happen first? 6,000 yards passing or 60 touchdowns passing?
60 touchdowns.
Really?
Oh.
How many did Allen have, or what's the record? Like 50 something, 55?
55, Peyton Manning.
Yeah, I mean that. I guess it's probably easier to get to add on 5 touchdowns.
Mahomes had what, 50 2 years ago? He had 50?
Yeah.
50 on the dot 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his weapons aren't going to be the same as they were 2 years ago, but I think, I mean, honestly, Brady, you look at his weapons, touchdown record, that might be him this year. I don't know about the yards with Brady, but the touchdowns.
He had what, 44 last year? I could see him having like more than that, especially that they have like Antonio Brown installed. That's just unfair.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I was interested. Yeah, we can cut it here.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate, again, all your support. Please let us know what you guys think about playoff predictions down below. We can't wait for this football season. Again, our schedule will be Monday and Friday this football season. I know we haven't stuck to it since we've said it, but we will be sticking to that Friday schedule soon. Again, we appreciate all of your support. We're almost at 50 episodes, and we couldn't have done that without every single one of you. You guys mean a ton to us, and thank you for supporting our channel. And we will be back on Friday to talk about the Bucs-Cowboys game, take some questions, and get ready to watch Week 1 on Sunday. Thank you so much.